Call to order the Greenwood Redevelopment Commission on this, the 13th day of December 2022. And a roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell,
Here.
Mr. Harris,
Present.
Mr. Hoover is absent, Mr. Hopper.
Here.
Mr. Moan.
Here.
Let the record show Mr. Hoover, and non-voting advisor, Mr. Alexander is absent.
We have a quorum, so we will continue on. So a motion to approve our regular minutes from the November 15th.
I'll motion that.
Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Campbell. Any corrections, additions, deletions? None. All those in favor, aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion is approved 4-0. New business. Nothing. Old business. Nothing. Capital project reports, downtown revitalization, Main Street, Madison Avenue Streetscape project, change order number 3.
Good afternoon. It's getting dark on it.
Kevin?
The first item we had is a change order on the streetscape project. Before I get the numbers on that, kind of just an update. We got Madison largely done. This is a project that goes the inverted hockey stick between Madison and Meridian, with a little bit going north on Madison, and of course all of Main Street in that section. And so we got most of Madison done. As you can see, there's brick sidewalks on both sides. The sewer, stormwater, and the water work, which we didn't know was going to happen on Madison itself, is done. And then on Main Street, the main stormwater line was put in. We ran into a million different things, 2 underground storage tanks when that auto parts store was a Dodge dealership, and every other thing you could imagine. But just in the last couple of days, I believe most of the bricks are in all along the north side of the sidewalk. And they've repaved the one side. So in the spring, we'll remobilize at a yet to be determined time and do the south side by Reverie and Smocktown and the auto repair shop, and then just come back in with the new signal that looks like the one at Main and Meridian in at the intersection of Main and Madison. So throughout the summer, we ended up with change order that ended up not too bad, especially from the percent side of $122,678.96. A lot of these dealt with grade issues, underground utilities, tying in various things that you would expect when you're doing construction in an area that is literally hundreds of years old. So I'd like to ask to approve the change order, which is still within what we've approved as far as expenditures, for $122,678.96, raising the total up to $4,421,064.42.
Any questions for Kevin? Is there a motion to approve change order number 30? I'll make it. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. PSA with Aegis Environmental.
Correct. This is one, we had split the work for the demolitions we did of the former Casa Miguel's and the house to the west of it that is owned by a private individual, but he's working with us, and then Sports Plus building. And we had gotten all the rest of them, the various surveys and asbestos removal. Besides this one, we just didn't get this one at the time. But this was for the asbestos survey and the samples. And then we've already, through the GCDC, right, we had done the actual pay to remove it. But the house that was next to it, between the bund, was basically just chock full of asbestos. So it's gone now and safely exposed. And so that was $4,200 for a GS Environmental.
Questions for Kevin? Is there a motion? Beckers, second by Mr. Bone. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion is approved. Louisville Road Sports Park.
Yeah, so this is, talk with Jim, the Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation. Today, take that up. Is this Polygon, or is this the?
Right now, I'm assuming it was the actual shelter house.
Okay.
Pros Shelter.
Yes,
House.
so this is for the shelter house that will go at the Worsville Road Sports Park, which if you've driven by there, the lights have been going up. They've got enough underground work done that they've been able to stand up all the lights, so you can start to see via where the big overhead lights are, kind of where the baseball slash softball diamonds will be. One item that you really don't buy in kind of a base contract, but you buy kind of separately are shelters for these places. The Parks Department does it all the time. So this would be an appropriation from the Worsville Road surplus for this 36-foot octagon, which is similar to, I believe, what is in City Center Park. I believe that's also eight-sided, for a total with shipping of $49,527.20. That project is not big because it's not in the roadways and has a lot of work that is not temperature dependent. We'll just keep on rolling.
Questions for Kevin? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Campbell.
I'll
Second by Mr. Harris. All right. Any discussion among commission members? All those in favor, aye. All those opposed, nay. Do you want to, while you're standing there, walk on the other ones that you have for us?
Yes, so we'll stick with the Worsville Road. This again is a work in concert with Rob Taggart and Jim over at Parks Department. And did they get the pictures that they sent along with them? They did, yes. So I don't go to a ton of softball and baseball events yet in my life, but if I may. But there is, when I've gone to bigger stadiums, you have great impressions along the third and first base line. And one of the things that the Greenwood Parks Department has done very well, particularly with assets that they've gotten that have involved kind of RDC funds that have raised the level of development, has provided basically canvases or platforms for partnerships. The field house alone for the Parks Department currently has commits of $100,000 a year to cover operating expenses and make improvements. And they have many other partnerships at Freedom Springs and community centers. So it's within their strategy to build their assets in a way that they can have a partnership matrix for the sports park as well. These are parks, some of Parks where it's not mine, but with the prime frontage on 65, they believe that due to the overwhelming interest, the sports park will be their easiest partnerships to market yet. And one of the ways to do that is to have these on-field impressions, and they're Velcro inserts that will go to the turf, but they can then change them out without having to damage or cut into the turf, and they think they'll recoup the cost of these in the form of income with just selling 3 of the A Fields sponsors. And the amount for the Velcro turf, doing work for here, is $38,428. That would also be from the Worsville Road surplus fund. And they're titled replaceable sponsorship turf logos. I want to, I think Brian Harris should get one personally. Brian Harris
From the
painting,
backyard.
house painting.
Yep.
Questions for Kevin?
So Kevin, I guess I'm curious. I don't know enough about the advertising, but is this more attractive or less attractive than, say, putting a name on the side of the building? I mean, I don't know enough. Can you speak to that?
I would say that this will command much, considering that if you look what the price is and how many they said they'd have to enter into partnerships with to recover it. I would say that it is much less expenditure, obviously, to purchase these inserts, but they sound like they can be rotated and would be a smaller investment for companies to do that. I don't know if, since there's no actual real buildings besides like concession stands for restrooms out there, if they will pursue that strategy, or if it will be primarily like the picture you have where they do kind of your classic baseball things and have, the outfield and other things available for partnerships. But I can tell you it never ceases to amaze me how many partners they found for all this stuff in the city.
Right.
So Kevin, sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna ask if this is the organization that is the contractor that's laying the turf.
It is,
It's
yes.
just that it would be an upgrade to the
Yes,
turf.
so my guess is that they, I know, they spec'd the turf and it didn't have these Velcro removable places. I know at the field house, which is a different setup, it's painted on, but it's already so busy now that they're already having to touch it up. And so my guess is that this is probably an improvement because of feedback from that allows to have these inserts that you can, place and move without any.
So these are 16 blank panels. That's what we're purchasing.
Yeah, you're basically buying
And
16.
then once they sell the sponsorship, the sponsor then or we create a logo that goes in these, and that.
Yeah, basically you're paying for, they're asking to do an upgrade to the contract they have with Sprint Turf to make these 16 areas essentially interchangeable and separate with this kind of adhesion system that then they can go out and procure sponsors with that will help drive interest in the facility and pay the cost of the facility in the long term without actually having to commit to someone to be painted on the base level turf.
To Mike's further question, so they're responsible for coming up with.
Yes,
the
this will
Velcro.
all be the parks department. All they're asking you, that's the long-term use of it, but this is basically like paying for, the ability to hang a sign on. When we designed the field house, we designed it in a way that there would be electricity up there for lights and then there would be areas inside where you could hang things and whatever else. This is basically upgrading the turf to allow it to have this possibility.
Any other questions for Kevin? Is there a motion to approve this is change order 1, I guess it is on this for Sprint Turf?
Correct. If you provide funding for change order 1,
$38,428.
yeah.
I'll make the motion by Mr.
A
Miller,
second.
second by Mr. King. Any discussion amongst commission members? Hearing none, all those. Did you have something?
No.
Okay, I heard a breath there. I thought I heard something. Okay. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion approved.
Clarify to me that I believe that contract is actually executed before work, so they'll want to go and get that change order on it. The RDC will be the funding agent for this change order, but the base contract was paid before work.
I don't know. There's a sticker on here. That means signed, so I signed it. If it's wrong, somebody else signed it over the top.
Well, I think the original.
Oh,
the
it originally
bond-
came here and then went to the bond. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but now the bond
Gotcha.
is with first.
All right.
RDC.
Gotcha.
I'm like Ron Burgundy up here.
I'm with Mr. Hubbard. He tells me to check something and I just check it. And I just hope, I know over the years that she's got it. All right. And I believe next now we go to Duke Energy. We've had these floating around forever. These are not the actual contracts. Duke apparently has a backlog of work at their contracting department. Just as an FYI, we don't have power yet to the sports park, even though we've been working on it for a year. So that's a whole other story. But these would be their requests for funding. We would then, Amanda, would we bring back contracts, or would we ask them to delegate someone to sign?
Probably need to bring the contracts back.
We would bring the contracts back whenever they're promulgated from the Duke Legal Department. We just wanted to get moving on this. So we could say we were doing our part. The first is, it is on Meridian Street, and it totals, it's two separate ones, but they're both same area of town that we've been working with them to these drawings on forever.
One was down by 523.
Yes, and I don't know, I mean, if they get that in there, included into it. You can see what it's doing is we got the commercial and the large buildings, the ones that you can see now, those plans came in first. And then in working with planning and CDS, the actual row homes that are on Meridian came in later and have their own plat. While that was happening, Duke was designing a bearing of transmission, not transmission, but transmission, but a bearing of distribution lines around that parcel, the big, essentially U-shaped 523. As you can see, they essentially just kind of terminated it where the last pole was, which is essentially where roughly P3 pad was, about right in between the two sets, the two buildings of row homes. What this does is take it basically all the way up to the north. It says 72 foot there, but essentially completely clears the overhead power lines from that development so that there will no longer be, it would have basically gone from a pole, gone past the arena, and then came down right to that transformer in front of those people's front yards. This moves it up right to the corner and gets it out of the way of that entire development. So it's additional feet, which means additional underground work, which total,
$43,126.83.
thank you, Amanda. There it is on the front side, $43,126.83. We've already committed to money from this. So this will be a change order. The developer is also paying what, $120,000 towards the poles. So this will be on our side, $43,126.83. It will be payable from east or central tip.
All right, so there was a lot going on there. Essentially, we're getting rid of all the poles on the east side of Meridian.
Yes, so we're getting rid of all the poles on the east side of Meridian. Before, the original work plan just terminated it where they had an existing pole. However, that left a giant green box and the wiring coming from further up Meridian, right in front of where there will be people's front yards. Because that work plan was done off just the commercial buildings, we hadn't platted yet the residential, which came in slightly after. We decided that those would be more marketable long-term, and it would be better for them to go ahead and design it to continue to go underground and basically duck underground as Arena and avoid the whole development. That meant more linear feet of underground buried work. And so it's roughly about 10% change order of the overall cost, because we're doing already 200 and some, the developer's doing 100 and some. And so that incremental cost was $43,126.83. We'd ask for, if you guys approve the funding, and then they have a legal backlog, they say, and we'll get their contracts once they've hammered them through with our legal department. We're yet to be in receipt of a draft of those. So it'd be funding contingent, right, on them bringing you a contract later.
What number change order are we calling this?
One.
This is number one.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve change order number one, the amount of $43,126.83? Motion by Mr. Harris, is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Moon. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. All right, motion approved 4-0.
Switching gears, but still within Duke, this is something we've asked them for a long, long time. This is at Councilman Hills Alley, as we call it, but it is the alley off Main Street in Madison. We're already doing a lot of work off the Madison side with the underground stormwater. The sewer has already come through and relocated theirs and relined their assets. The water company came through this summer. That whole area is a just absolute jungle of utilities. So we worked with Duke, got them to make a work plan. It's $8,213.76. In that exhibit or on the back of it, you can basically see that they essentially abandoned a pole that sits on the east-west alley, and then they go over underground and will allow them to go underground to the businesses that are on the east and west side of the alley that runs north-south, and will get rid of the overhead power line in that alley, which will allow us to pursue some sort of, enhancement to it, whether we haven't decided yet, whether it's paving or pavers or the first thing that needed to happen, which has taken a long time, is to upgrade and redo the utilities. And so this will provide us the ability to move those power lines underground. And of course, we have to coordinate with all the other attaching utilities, telephone and whatnot to it. But by approving this funding request, we can start on that while we wait for their contract documents. I think the central tip would be the best paying agent for this. It already does the alley project, which we spent some money on historically. And that total is $8,213.76.
Does everybody else get that from this picture?
If you look at where the square is,
Yeah, I see where
and there's a pole back there, if you
Okay.
get back there.
And it says remove pole. I
They
get
didn't
that.
even, it took a while because they didn't even have the pole in their inventory, so they had to figure that out first. It was an old like PSI ancient type pole. And so the pole goes away, they put in, the box is basically like one of your green boxes that you see even in residential subdivisions, much more manageable. And then you can see there's underground runs, rather than currently they kind of hang like a ropes course, only about 8 feet above the ground through that alley to those businesses. This will take it underground, and then we can, make some sort of improvements that you guys can fit and the administration and the stakeholders there see fit. But all this utility work had to happen first.
What was option one? Because I see.
Option
this was
one-
option
That was
two.
gonna be my question.
Option one was slightly less expensive and set a new pole, I believe, rather than the box. I believe it set a pole roughly where the other one was. It would still go underground for a little bit, but rather than going underground all the way back towards, what would that be? Towards the insurance building, as you can see, the backside of Lee Money's, it would have stayed above ground. And you just would have had a new pole that then would have gone underground right there on the entrance to those apartments above Frameworks. So we decided that for the incremental amount, getting more wires away from people was the right decision.
I agree.
Now, why they still submitted a thing that said single or double question mark, if you look at that,
Yeah,
right?
I see
That,
that, yeah.
I thankfully didn't go to that school up in northern Indiana, and they can deal with their.
Is West Lafayette, is that what you're considering northern
Stop
Indiana?
digging.
Yeah,
Alright,
it's a lot further north than Bloomington.
but those might have been roads, folks, you never know.
Yeah.
So $8,213.76.
Is there-
Tip.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Kimball, second, Register. All those in favor, aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion approved 4-0.
They won't see you. I hope you all have a great Christmas, and also that was no offense to you, Mark, to go to a very fine institution of Tri-State that I refuse to call Trump.
Merry Christmas to you as well. All right, next up, Financial report.
And you thought I was all sideways, wait till you get this thing.
Good evening, and as far as the monthly financial report, happy to take any questions, but it is shared and updated for you all. The annual TIP presentation is the main presentation today. We have invited overlapping units representatives to this meeting. It doesn't appear that any of them are in person or online. So with that, I know that you all have seen it electronically, have a copy. I'm going to be concise, if that's okay today. I'm happy to take any questions. We'll post a copy of this and make it readily available. And then we have contact information available for myself and the city controller. The packet that will also be uploaded so that if anyone has questions, they can do this. Okay. So a couple of just key aspects, and I'll try to call out the page number. The slide numbers here. The first thing, this presentation is a statutory requirement. This relatively recent TIP requirements a few years back. Oh, you're on. Okay, there you go. Cool. Let's see. There we go. Thank you. So it has certain things that it has to incorporate. It has to incorporate the commission's budget, the long-term plan, and then the impact. And we just provided the statutory guidance as well. Jumping ahead, I'm going to jump to page 12. There's a lot in here. This goes through the various different budgets, both the general fund and the appropriations. A lot of this you have seen. General fund budget, your attainment utilization year to date is actually pretty low. We only used about 30% of the general fund budget. The 2023 budget was adopted by council is the same. TIP appropriations were approved via public hearing at your last meeting. Those will go into effect 2023. Those have been separately publicly noticed. The allocation area finances, both from a revenue and expense and then a fund balance perspective, those are all publicly available on the city's website through the separately published Redevelopment Commission annual report. That'll be likely prepared again in February, March of next year. All of the bond information, both the principal of amounts outstanding, as well as the current and projected debt service information is laid out there as well. So the concept of these overlapping units is that Redevelopment Commission obviously shares jurisdiction with overlapping units, libraries, counties, cities, schools, special districts, etc., townships. And so this is an example of all the different tax districts that the Greenwood Redevelopment Commission spans across, okay, within Johnson County. So I did want to spend a second on this slide for really two reasons. One is it's pretty core to the financial planning that the TIP plans. And then also there's actually a typo in your packet that we're going to get corrected. So the TIP revenue here, that's not a real number. That's a mistake by me, but the correct number there, the 16 million number should be $16,149,000 even. So we'll correct that and get that on the web version today. So when we look at the 2023 incremental assessed values that are captured by the Greenwood Redevelopment Commission, it was an increase year over year of 20% in aggregate. The TIP revenue that's expected to be generated off that cumulative incremental value is $16,149,000 next year. And that is in addition to approximately $18.2 million in cash and investments on hand. The annual 2023 debt service requirements, that's the outstanding principal, interest, and sinking fund type requirements, is just shy of $8.5 million. So about a 2-to-1 coverage when we look at the full TIP revenue versus the debt service across all the Redevelopment Commission's allocation areas. And the expected TIP surplus next year for additional pay-as-you-go projects would be $7,669,000. The forward debt service coverage ratio, these are subject to change, but each year we try to provide these as a outlook for each of the east side allocation area, looking at 2023's TIF versus debt service. It has a projected future coverage ratio of 168%. Fry Road is at 93%. We'll come back to that in a moment. Central's at 218%, and Worsville Road is at 759%. A couple notes on that. Let's start with Worsville Road. The debt is still ramping in, so we do actually would anticipate that to compress a little bit on Worsville Road. Central and East Side are right where we expect them to be. Fry Road is actually increased slightly. So when COVID shut the mall down, there was an additional commercial appeal filed and granted on the mall. That was in addition to the Penny's bankruptcy and the Sears closure and those types of things. So 50% of the Fry Road captured AB is in the mall. And so any material changes in their assessed value impact that. The controller and I are constant conversations on this one. One of the things you'll see on the Redevelopment Commission's balance sheet is that the Fry Road surplus fund has largely remained unused because it's effectively covering this potential shortfall. But also say that the 2023 versus the 2022 mall assessed value is actually up. So as they've reopened and they're starting to kind of stabilize, get back to some sort of normal operations there, the assessed values are coming back up. And that's the largest taxpayer in the allocation area. So while it's under, on a current revenue standpoint, the cash position could more than pay for the bonds outstanding. So there's no issue in repayment. There's no issue in that. It's just we wanted to make it clear.
Hey, Adam, on that subject, does that put us in violation of any bond covenants or anything?
It's a good question, one that we've looked into. We've reached out and informed, and to our knowledge, no.
Okay. And then I just wanted to point out the page before that. If I'm looking at this, I want to get this on record. 7 out of the 8 districts, the tax rates have actually gone down since 2019. Oh, interesting. A lot of people say it's just the opposite, but it looks like, according to this, except for Greenwood City, White River Township, all of those tax rates have gone down, except for that.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
All right, got it on record.
Let's see, yeah,
That's probably where I live. So that's why.
That was the
It
one.
wasn't mine.
That's the White River
Yeah.
Fire Department.
Well, that one doesn't say where, the other one has White River Fire in it. So I'm assuming that's Greenwood City, White River Township, Library, Greenwood Schools. Is that what that one is?
040,
right?
or
040.
Yeah, 041 is the one that went up, and it's White River Fire.
Yeah.
Oh, White River Fire. Okay. Yeah.
I will jump back again to try to be concise. There's a lot of information here, and we would obviously encourage interested parties to look into it, but for sake of brevity tonight, it goes through all the different allocation areas, the general take of the long-term plans, some key components of all the different plans. This is one that I want to stop on for a second. So in 2022, there were some TIP amendments. So there's an amendment to carve out recreation of what was formerly the I-65 East allocation area has been reestablished as the new Combs Road Part 1 allocation area, the new Emerson Point Project Pacific allocation area, as well as the boundary amendments for the central allocation area. So those were all duly noted and actually just got confirmed at your last meeting. So those that on there. And as far as recent projects, Kevin in his aspect covered many of them. We linked the video out here so folks can see it on the web as well. The couple main, obviously the Madison project, it's hard to miss that one. The Main Street projects, but then projects that are being evaluated, obviously East Side utility extension agreements, there's some Market Plaza work being evaluated, Main Street widening, east of downtown, Smith Valley Road widening, Madison Avenue Phase 2, which is the land that's on the north west corner of the site, and then the airport land sale activation, just to name a few. That is not exhaustive. And lastly, looking at the effect so for page 23, the redevelopment commission as a whole is just approximately $640 million captured. The largest allocation area is still the east side allocation area. The central expansion, sometimes called the downtown tip, is now the second largest allocation area. And then relative to year over year, the southwest tip is actually saw the largest percent growth year over year. This is actually a chart that the controller and I look at quite often. This is the net assessed value growth differences between the city's net assessed value and the redevelopment commission's net assessed value. The blue line is the city, the red line is the TIF growth, and you can see the 10-year average returns. So over the last 10 years, the redevelopment commission across all the TIFs have a geometric return of 9.5%, whereas the city is 6.5%. Again, our one of the health indicators we look at is make sure that there's a favorable margin or favorable spread between those two. And then looking at the projection of that, so when we look at the historic capture assessed values from 2012 through 2023, and then we project that with a conservative, I think in this model we ran it at a 7% growth rate. You can see we would reach $1 billion captured by pay 2028, 2029. The current trajectory. That's it. There's obviously a lot in here, but there's also a lot more online. So the city and the redevelopment commission publishes all the monthly reports, the annual reports online. The monthly interactive is actually a live link that's accessible at any time. The audited financials are on the city's website as well, along with the budgets and the transparency tools. In addition, there's a collaborative projects agreement process for any of the overlapping units, and our contact information is in the packet as well. So I know that was a lot, but I appreciate it. Happy to take any questions. Otherwise, we will post this online tonight, and happy to take any questions.
Work in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob.
Department reports. Anything from Corporation Counsel's office tonight?
I'm here on Sam's behalf. He didn't have anything.
Thanks, Joe. Mr. Watson?
Nothing today.
Mr. Wright?
Nothing from me.
Mr. St. John?
Good evening. Before I get started on this change order, I suppose I can give you an update on Morrisville Road Section 2. The road is open to through traffic. Includes the roundabout is also open, except the north leg is not open to the bridge project that's still underway. There is a couple hundred feet of roadway left on Stones Crossing and the 3 tie-ins that need to be completed next year. That was always the intent, is for this project to span multiple construction season. So,
But most importantly, when is the bridge going to be done?
so they have been tearing out the bridge last week to this week. They're scheduled to get the footings tomorrow. They're going to start setting them. So we're hopeful towards the end of the year for it to be that way.
So are we.
Yeah.
That might be different.
I'm gonna bite my tongue because I have curse words. Okay, keep going, sir.
Okay, so tonight I have for you change order number 4 for Worsville Road. This change order covers additional handle that was added at the intersection of Honey Creek and Snow's Crossing. We moved the location where the meter and the cabinet sit for the lighting of the roundabout. Positioned it better, it was closer to some existing transformers for the electric utility, so it's easier to place it. It just required an extra handle that was not for contract. So we added it at a cost of $1,638, which again, total for all four of these change orders is less than 1% of the total contract.
Any questions? Is there a motion to approve change order number 4? I'll make a motion. Touched by Mr. Mo. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Harris. All those in favor, aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion approved 4-0.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything from the mayor's office? Anybody? Take that as a no. All right, is there a motion to approve our December claims docket, in the amount of $2,566,528.04? Motion. Motion, Mr. Harris. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Miller. Questions, comments from commission members? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Docket is approved 4-0. All right, so we have carryover purchase orders from 4 people sitting at this table, actually 3, I suppose, because one of them is in here, it looks like. Is there a motion to approve? I guess I will make the motion to approve. You want to second that, Mr. Campbell?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed,
Should
nay.
I vote?
We all need to vote because, well, I guess Mr. Moan,
At least-
myself, and Mr. Campbell could probably vote. We need 3.
I don't think it changed anything. It just allows them to make those payments in the upcoming year for this year. So I don't think it's.
Aye.
All right, all those in favor, aye? Aye. Okay, all those opposed, nay. Motion approved. 4-0. Our appointment to the Greenwood Community Development Corporation, she wants to continue on.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
How often do we appoint
You
her?
do it once a year. It's a 1-year appointment.
Because I don't remember doing it last year, but that doesn't make any sense.
Who's our 20?
Michelle.
Michelle
Simmons.
Simmons.
There you go. Is there a motion to reappoint?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Campbell. Oh, and she said she would love to continue to serve. I should point that out too. I'll second. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Anything else to come before us today, either out in the interwebs or in person from anyone? Hearing and seeing none, we'll stand adjourned.